What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Today I'll be going over my thought process on how I build weapons, and I'll be going step by step to show you how to build upon the strengths of each weapon in the game so you don't have to waste your time finding a build that's right for you. But there are a few things that we need to go over first, so let's get straight into it. The first thing is that a lot of weapons feel very similar to each other, and there are some weapons that share the same damage models, fire rates, and muzzle velocities, like the B36 and the L110, and the M16 and DRS. So don't be too surprised if some builds look the exact same. There's also the reduction to muzzle velocities across the board, which has made extended or heavy extended barrels way more viable for mid to long range combat, especially on SMGs or lower velocity carbines. And with the bullet spread being increased, it's way more important to use the violet or blue lasers, or the heavy extended, light, or cryogenic barrels to keep the spread tighter for longer. And then there's the recoil. While the recoil variation was reduced in the HVT update, it's still very prevalent on a lot of weapons, so you still have to be a bit careful with the attachments you choose. Attachments like the long or lightened suppressors and the aftermarket buffer have always been viable options, and they're still just as viable. You also have to think about how attachments synergize with each other, like the long and lightened suppressors, compensators, and brakes with various grips and the aftermarket buffer, which is the obvious one. You also have the blue laser and the violet laser with the light barrel, the heavy barrel, and the cryogenic barrel, green lasers with the short barrel, and suppressors with the new subsonic ammo. So with all that in mind, let's get started with the assault rifles. So first we're going to talk about the M433, the NVO, and the Cord. All three of these weapons are great in close to mid-range engagements, but they can be a bit unwieldy for various reasons. So for the M433, you can see without any attachments, the recoil is a bit crazy. It's going to be a bit harder to get longer range kills, even when you're tap firing. So you do want to build around that to reduce the recoil. So first, let's go over a short range build. So for close range builds on assault rifles, you'll ideally want to increase the close range potential without sacrificing too much of its mid-range effectiveness. And since the recoil is a bit crazy on the M433, I'm going to use the long suppressor, but you could also use the lightened suppressor, the compensated brake, the compensator, or the double port brake. But I'm going to go with the long suppressor just so I can get that spotting reduction and those improvements to recoil buildup and recovery. As you can see, even with the long suppressor, the recoil is way more tame, it's a lot easier to control, and you can reach out to farther ranges a lot easier when tap firing. For the barrel, I am going to use the short barrel just so I can get improvements to hip fire accuracy and ADS speed, but it is going to lower my muzzle velocity a little bit, which isn't that big of a deal in my opinion. 500 meter per second muzzle velocity is still more than enough to reach out into mid-range engagements pretty easily. For the grip, you could use the alloy vertical grip, the ribbed vertical grip, either of the angled grips or the ribbed subby. Personally, I'm going to go with the ribbed subby just so I can get some better ADS speed. But if you wanted some better sprint recovery and draw speed, you could go with the slim angled grip or the full angled grip instead. And for my final 10 points, I'm going to go with the green laser. You could obviously use the violet laser to increase your effectiveness at range, or you can go with the red laser if you don't want it to be seen by enemy players. And as you can see, it's pretty easy to get hip fire kills, even at range. And even at range, you're still going to be able to hit targets pretty easily because of the suppressor and the foregrip, so you have some pretty good effectiveness at range and up close. Now you can obviously switch attachments around so you can use the CQB suppressor to get rid of that hip fire penalty, but it is going to make the recoil a bit more unwieldy and hard to use at longer ranges, so it is something to think about. And if you don't really care about reducing your spotting distance, I would recommend using the compensated brake because it also reduces your recoil on top of improving your recoil buildup and recovery. But for the most part, this is what you're going to want your build to look like. You could switch to the alloy vertical grip just so you have some extra points to spend on a 20-point laser, or you could spend points on the fast mag and lightweight ammo, or you can put on the mag flare. And for a more versatile build, what I'm going to do is keep the long suppressor, switch to the extended barrel and the violet laser. With the extra 10 points, I'm going to switch to the hollow point ammo, and I'm going to switch to the grip to the canted stubby for some extra recoil control. This is going to give me an accuracy penalty, which is going to increase bullet spread at range, but that's why I equipped the violet laser, to offset that penalty. So instead of outright improving the ADS accuracy or making it worse, it's going to keep it around the base value. As you can see, a lot easier to control at range. You just have to deal with the recoil variation, but the recoil itself is very easy to control. Past 50 meters, I would recommend tap firing, just so you have more accuracy and your bullet spread stays as accurate as possible, but you can spray pretty easily at farther range targets. Next, we're going to talk about the NVO, which is also pretty decent in close to mid-range engagements. It has decent muzzle velocity, and the recoil isn't too bad, but its bullet spread is a lot wider than most ARs, and the penalties are pretty intense. So to keep this thing versatile and accurate, what you're going to want to do is equip the long suppressor for the improvements to recoil buildup and recovery, as well as reducing your spotting distance. For the barrel, you can either go for the light barrel or the cryo barrel. Both of these barrels will improve your bullet spread, but the difference is that the light barrel will increase your ADS accuracy while moving, and the cryo barrel is going to keep your bullet spread tighter for longer while you're spraying bullets. Personally, I like the light barrel a bit better just because I like to strafe around while I'm moving, but it's up to you. Next, I'm going to use the violet laser to keep the bullet spread even tighter while I'm moving around in ADS. And for the grip, I'm going to use the ribbed vertical grip. This grip does come with an accuracy penalty, but the violet laser and the light barrel will do more than enough to offset and improve your accuracy regardless. But if you want to avoid that penalty, you could still get away with using the alloy vertical grip instead. And for the last 5 points, you could equip a fast mag, you could get lightweight ammo, or you can switch to the lightened suppressor instead to get rid of that weapon sway penalty. But personally, I'm going to use the recoil buffer instead. With this build, it's going to be very easy to hit your shots. It's very accurate. Even at farther ranges, you can spray it full auto for longer, even while moving, without missing many shots. For a short range build, what I'm going to do is switch to the short barrel, so I have some extra points to switch to the CQB suppressor, and then I'm going to get rid of the ribbed vertical grip and the aftermarket buffer, just so I have room for a 20-point laser and hollow point ammo. This setup is still going to be pretty easy to control at range. You can get kills easily up to around 35 meters, but you will need to tap fire at 50 meters or past that. So with the hollow point ammo, you're going to get a 2-shot headshot up to about 5 meters. And then you're going to get a 3-shot headshot up to about 35 meters. And past that, it's going to be 4 shots. Now, if you wanted to spend some extra points on a fast mag or the aftermarket buffer, you could switch back to the long suppressor, or you could switch back to the 10-point laser to get the aftermarket buffer and a fast mag, or you can switch to the basic barrel. And for the cord, you don't really have to try as hard with the recoil control, but you still have to be a bit careful. Even without any attachments, it's pretty easy to control at range. You can get kills up to about 50 meters pretty easily, but it can get a little bit out of control if you're trying to reach out to 75 meters without tap firing. So for close range, we're going to use the CQB suppressor to reduce the spotting distance without any sway or hipfire penalties. And since the cord doesn't have the short barrel, I'm just going to stick with the basic barrel, but you could switch to the heavy barrel if you wanted some better accuracy at range. And for the laser, I'm actually going to use the 30-point blue laser just so I have some extra hipfire accuracy for close range engagements and some ADS accuracy for mid-range engagements. But if you wanted, you could use the 20-point lasers or the laser light combo. And with my last 10 points, I'm going to equip the hollow point ammo. And as you can see with the hollow point ammo, you're going to get a 4-shot headshot all the way up to 75 meters. And it's still going to be very easy to control. You're going to be able to reach out to about 50 meters pretty easily with this setup, but you will have to burst fire for more accuracy. And the hipfire accuracy is also very good. You can hipfire pretty easily up to about 20 meters, but again, I wouldn't recommend hipfiring that far. Even at 10 meters, you should probably just be aiming in instead of trying to hipfire, but you do what you gotta do. And for a more versatile setup, I'm going to switch to the long suppressor for improvements to recoil buildup and recovery, and then I'm going to switch to the violet laser, and I'm going to get rid of the hollow point ammo. And with these extra points, I'm going to switch to the light barrel, and I'm going to add the slim angled grip. And just like with the NVO, the light barrel and violet laser are going to significantly tighten your bullet spread, and since there's no accuracy penalties from the slim angled grip, you're not going to have to deal with offsetting any penalties. And as you'll see, it's going to be very easy to control. I don't have to move my mouse as much to counter the recoil, and I can reach out at farther ranges a lot easier, with or without tap firing. Next is going to be the TR7 and the VCR. While both of these weapons are more controllable after the HVT update, they're still pretty unwieldy. As you can see with the TR7, it's pretty crazy without any attachments. Even with attachments, it can still be pretty hard to control at range. So ideally, you are going to want the double port brake, the compensator, the compensated brake, or the light and or long suppressors. And even with the suppressor being the only attachment equipped, you'll see it's a lot easier to control. But that's not saying much. And for the barrel, I would ideally stick with the basic barrel since you're not really going to be able to reach out to mid-range engagements that easily. But for the sake of having some extra points, I am going to switch to the extended barrel. And for the grip, you are going to want to use the classic vertical grip or the low-profile stubby, just so you can significantly reduce your recoil. But these grips also reduce your ADS movement speed, so you do have to be a bit more careful in closer range engagements. And with the last 5 points, you could switch to the mag catch, or you could switch to the lightweight ammo, as well as a 20-round fast mag or the aim tac light. But for me personally, I am going to switch to the 20-round fast mag. With all this put together, it's going to be way easier to control, and you could even reach out to the 35-meter target a lot easier than you would without these attachments. The recoil is still going to be pretty finicky, so you do have to be careful. I would recommend tap firing anywhere past 20 meters, but it's still going to be way more accurate than it was before. And alternatively, you could switch to the compensator just so you have some extra points. This attachment will still improve your recoil buildup and recovery, but it doesn't have that spotting reduction that the suppressors do, so you do have to be a bit more careful in most situations. Next, I'm going to switch to the basic barrel just so I can get some ADS speed back. And then I'm going to switch to the classic vertical grip just so I have some more points to spend. And with the rest of the points, I'm going to switch to the 25 round mag and the violet laser just to help offset the penalty from the grip. And for the VCR, you can pretty much put the same exact attachments on it. But since I actually have attachments like the compensated brake, I'm going to use that instead, since it actually reduces recoil on top of improving the recoil buildup and recovery. I'm also going to keep the basic barrel, and I'm going to equip the classic vertical grip. And since I don't have to spend any extra points on a mag, I'm going to equip the violet laser, and I'm going to equip the aftermarket buffer with my last 5 points. And if we go into the firing range real quick, you'll see that it's a lot easier to control, but it is still going to be a bit unwieldy at longer ranges, so you do have to be a bit more careful. And next we could talk about the M16, which is very similar to the DRS in more than a few ways. It does have the same damage model, rate of fire, and you can give it the same muzzle velocities with the extended barrel. And just like the DRS, it's very accurate, and it lacks recoil, which helps in longer range engagements. And there are more than a few ways to build this weapon, so I'm going to start with the full auto build. So obviously, you're going to want the full auto receiver, and then I'm going to switch to either the extended or heavy extended barrels. Either of these barrels are fine, but with the heavy extended barrel, you're going to get a penalization to your sprint recovery and your weapon draw speed. So this is something that you have to consider. But to avoid those penalties and to get some extra points, I am going to go for the extended barrel. For the muzzle, I am going to use the compensated brake just so I can get some extra points to spend elsewhere, and I can get that reduction to recoil and the improvements to recoil buildup and recovery. For the grip, I'm going to use the slim angled grip just so I can get my improvements to ADS speed, sprint recovery, and recoil. And with my last 5 points, I'm personally going to go for the lightweight ammo just so I can get some ADS movement speed. But you could obviously use the fast mag instead if you wanted to. Now this setup specifically is going to feel pretty similar to the DRS, but the recoil variation is a bit worse in my opinion. And with the compensated brake, you're going to have to deal with the base 3D and 2D spotting, which is going to be a bit difficult in most situations. What I'm going to do for a more versatile build is switch to the aftermarket buffer just so I have some extra points to spend elsewhere. And then I'm going to switch to the light and suppressor to reduce my spotting range and improve my recoil. I'm going to keep the extended barrel, switch to the ribbed stubby for better ADS speed, and then with my last 10 points, I'm going to equip the violet laser. But you could obviously spend your last 10 points on a fast mag and lightweight ammo, or a different barrel. And alternatively, you could switch to the slim angled or the full angled grip just to get some better sprint recovery and draw speed. Now this setup is going to be way more accurate than the full auto build, and you're going to be able to reach out to farther ranges a lot easier. You are going to notice a tiny bit of spread when you're spamming bullets, so I would recommend bursting a little bit slower just so you can be as accurate as possible and you can avoid that recoil variation. The next weapons we're going to talk about are the B36, the SOR-556, and the LED-5. All 3 of these weapons are very good in mid to long range combat, but there are a few downsides for each of them that we have to talk about. The B36 is actually going to have the worst bullet spread out of all 3 of these weapons, but it is going to be more effective in close range combat. When it comes to the SOR and the LED-5, both of them are very accurate at longer ranges, and they don't have a lot of bullet spread. But the SOR is going to be the least effective out of the 3 ARs in close range combat, and the LED-5 is going to have the most recoil out of these 3 ARs, which really isn't saying much in general. But all 3 of these ARs do have relatively low recoil, and they can have some of the fastest muzzle velocities out of all the assault rifles. The best things you can do for the B36 is build it for versatility or mid-range engagements. So for a versatile build, what you're going to want is the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the full angled grip, the 50 milliwatt blue laser, and the aftermarket buffer. The suppressor, the grip, and the aftermarket buffer are going to help make this weapon way more accurate at longer ranges since it's reducing recoil, and the blue laser is going to help offset the accuracy penalty from the grip, and it's going to improve your hipfire accuracy to be more effective in close range combat. Alternatively, what you can do is get rid of the laser, keep the suppressor and the extended barrel, switch to the slim angled grip, and add the synthetic tip ammo and the fast mag. With this build, you're going to get a 3-shot headshot up to 75 meters, and you're going to have enough recoil control to get longer range targets pretty easily when going full auto. But I would obviously recommend burst firing past around 50 meters with this build. For a build that's more focused on mid to long range, what you're going to want to do is keep the suppressor and the extended barrel, get rid of the synthetic tip ammo and the fast mag, and use those points to equip the stippled stubby and the violet laser to help offset the accuracy penalty from the grip. Like I was saying earlier, the spread is going to be noticeably worse than all the other ARs. You can get some kills pretty easily at farther ranges if you're standing still, but if you're moving around, you're going to see the accuracy is notably worse, and you're better off just tap firing it past 50 meters. Now, if you're a bit better at handling recoil, you can use a lower tier grip like the canted stubby, the ribbed vertical grip, or the alloy grip, but the stippled stubby is going to be your best option to be as accurate as possible at range. The SOR 5.56, on the other hand, is going to be the best of the three assault rifles for mid to long range combat. Even without any attachments, the SOR 5.56 is very easy to control, even with a 3x scope. The best build that I found for the SOR includes the light and suppressor, the extended barrel, the alloy vertical grip, the 30-round fast mag, synthetic tip ammo, and the aftermarket buffer. This setup is going to be your best bet for mid to long range combat. With the synthetic tip ammo, you're going to get a 3-shot headshot up to around 35 meters, and a 4-shot headshot up to around 75 meters. And what you can do instead for this build is get rid of the synthetic tip ammo and the fast mag, keep the light and suppressor and the extended barrel, switch to the ribbed stubby, and equip the violet laser. This build is going to be a lot better for red sec specifically, because the violet laser will help keep you accurate past 75 meters, but even while moving, you're going to be able to hit a lot more shots in the 50 to 75 meter range. You could also switch to the compensated break and a 5x scope to make it even more accurate at farther ranges. With the 5x scope equip, it's going to feel about the same as it does with a 3x scope and a suppressor, but there is going to be a little bit more recoil variation with the 5x scope, so you do have to be careful. Otherwise, this is going to be one of the best builds for RedSec that you can use for long range. And you can pretty much build the L85 the exact same as the SOR. So for this setup, you're going to want the light and suppressor, the extended barrel, the ribbed vertical grip, the violet laser, and synthetic tip ammo. And just like the SOR build, it's not going to be very hard to control at range, and because you have synthetic tips, you're going to be able to kill a lot faster when you hit headshots. The spread is a little bit worse in my opinion than the SOR, so you do have to be a bit more careful at farther ranges, but it's still going to be a really good build for mid to long range combat. And the final AR is going to be the AK-4D, which is one of the best assault rifles in my opinion. The recoil honestly isn't that bad, and the bullet spread is also pretty tight, but it does have a lot of visual recoil which can be a bit jarring. Without any attachments, it's pretty noticeable. There's a lot of kickback, which can make aiming at targets a little difficult. So for the AK-4D, I would recommend going for the long or light and suppressors, but you could obviously use the double port brake, the compensated brake, or the compensator. All of them are going to do pretty much the same thing, and it's going to be way more helpful for mid-range combat. And I would obviously recommend using the extended or the heavy extended barrel, but I like to use the extended barrel because it doesn't come with the sprint recovery penalty or the draw speed penalty. And I have those extra 5 points to spend elsewhere. I would personally go for the ribbed stubby just so I can get that extra ADS speed, but you could also use the alloy vertical grip or the slim angled grip to make some room for other attachments. For the laser, you can go for the red or the green laser for better hip-fire accuracy in close range situations, or you can use the violet laser for better ADS accuracy in mid to long range situations. And since the visual recoil is pretty bad on this AR, I am going to use the aftermarket buffer. And as you can see, the visual recoil is way less intense and it doesn't really interfere with your aim as much. And with the last 5 points, you could obviously go for lightweight ammo or a fast mag, or the tac light if you wanted this AR to be more effective in close range combat. But I'm personally going to go for the lightweight ammo because it brings my ADS movement speed from 0.6 to 0.67. And with all this put together, you'll see the strafe speed is a lot faster, which will throw a lot more people off than you'd think. And with the suppressor and the grip combined, the recoil is a lot less intense, which will let you shoot out to longer ranges really easily. I would obviously recommend tap firing because there is still a little bit of spread, but it's not that noticeable if you're standing still. When it comes to carbines, you can build them with the same thought process as the ARs. You can build the M4, the SG, and the GRT the same as the M433. The AK-205 and the M277 the same as the B36, but I would recommend focusing a little bit more on recoil with the M277 since it is a bit crazy, and you can build the M417 and the SOR300 the same as the NVO. The QBZ is the odd one out in this situation. In my opinion, the QBZ is a mixed bag of all the other weapon types in the game. It has handling that's more aligned with SMGs, a muzzle velocity that's more aligned with assault rifles, and recoil that's more aligned with LMGs. And this is one of the few weapons that don't have as many attachment options as the rest of the weapons in the game, so it can be a bit difficult to figure out what to put on this carbine. Without any attachments, the recoil is a bit crazy and it can be hard to engage in mid to long range combat, but it isn't that hard to get it under control with the right attachments. So ideally, you're going to want to use the standard suppressor, the extended barrel, the canted stubby, the violet laser to offset that accuracy penalty, hollow point ammo to increase your headshot damage, and the rail cover to increase your draw speed and your sprint recovery. With any other build, I would honestly go for the ribbed stubby or the alloy vertical grip, but since the QBZ doesn't have the long or lion suppressor, I decided to use the canted stubby for a bit of extra recoil control. And as you can see, the recoil is a lot more to control. The variation is a bit more noticeable, but it's not that hard to compensate. With the hollow point ammo, you're going to get a 3-shot kill to the head up until about 10 meters, and then a 4-shot between 20 and 75 meters. So you will have a faster time to kill if you hit consistent headshots. And I would recommend just sticking with hollow point ammo because the synthetic tip will still give you a 3-shot headshot from 0 to 10 meters and a 4-shot between 20 and 75, so it's honestly just a waste of points. When it comes to SMGs, I like to build them to be more effective in mid-range combat without sacrificing close-range effectiveness. So for the SGX, the PW5, the UMG-40, and the SL9, all the builds are going to be pretty similar. For a good versatility build on the SGX, I personally like to use the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the slim angled grip, the 50 milliwatt blue laser, the 30 round fast mag, and the aftermarket buffer. And with all this put together, the recoil isn't very hard to control, but the recoil variation can catch you off guard if you aren't careful. With the blue laser, you also get some pretty good hipfire accuracy, and it gives you better ADS accuracy while moving, so you can hit longer range targets easier while strafing. For a more hipfire focused build, what you'll ideally want to do is keep the laser and the aftermarket buffer, get rid of the grip, switch to the 36 round mag, the short barrel, and the CQB suppressor. And with this build, you'll see that it's way easier to get hipfire kills, even up to 20 meters. And the recoil is still manageable enough that you can get longer range kills if you really needed to. And for a close range build, you're going to want to keep the aftermarket buffer, switch to the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the 5 milliwatt green laser, and the 30 round fast mag. And with the leftover points, you're going to want to re-equip the slim angled grip and the subsonic ammo. With the subsonic ammo and the suppressor equipped, your 2D spotting range is going to get brought down to 9 meters, which is going to make you a lot harder to find in close range combat. The biggest downside though is that it brings your muzzle velocity down to 300 meters per second, which is why I didn't put the short barrel on. As you'll see with the short barrel, your muzzle velocity gets brought down to 193 meters per second. And if you have a 193 meter per second muzzle velocity, your bullets are going to take a lot longer to hit your targets at farther ranges. Up close, it's going to be pretty instant, but as you can see when I hit the 70 meter target, it takes quite a while for the bullet to travel. So that's why I decided to use the extended barrel instead. Even with the extended barrel, it still does take some time, but it is a lot faster than it would be with any other barrel. And you're going to want the MP5 to be pretty similar to the SGX build. So for a more versatile build, instead of the long suppressor, you're going to want to equip the lightened suppressor, equip the extended barrel and the slim angled grip, skip the laser, stick on the 30 round fast mag and the aftermarket buffer, and then with the rest of your points, you're going to want to equip the synthetic tip ammo. With this setup, you're going to get a 3-shot kill up close, up to until about 10 meters, and then I believe it's going to be a 4-shot from 20 to 75 meters. And obviously, with the recoil control, it's going to be very easy to hit your shots at range, even while you're moving around. And your time to kill can be significantly quicker if you hit headshots at range. For a more hip-fire focused build, you're going to want to get rid of the synthetic tip ammo, swap to the CQB suppressor and the basic barrel, keep the 30 round fast mag and the aftermarket buffer, get rid of the grip, and then use the rest of your points to equip the 120 milliwatt blue laser. In my opinion, the MP5 has the best hipfire builds out of all the SMGs. It's very accurate, and you don't miss a lot of shots even while moving. And for the close range build, you'll ideally want to keep the CQB suppressor, the aftermarket buffer, and the fast mag, switch back to the extended barrel, swap to the 5 milliwatt green laser, and with the rest of your points, you're going to want to equip the subsonic hollow point ammo, which is going to bring your spotting distance down to 9 meters and give you some extra headshot damage. And with this build, you're going to get a 3-shot headshot up to around 5 meters, a 4-shot headshot up to around 35 meters, and then a 5-shot headshot up to around 75 meters. Obviously, I would recommend sticking with the extended barrel just so you have a better muzzle velocity, but you can swap some attachments around to use the basic barrel instead. Otherwise, the builds are going to be the exact same for the UMG-40 and the SL9. But for the PW7 and the USG-90, you are going to want to build these a bit different because their damage is lower and their damage models aren't as versatile as other SMGs. For the MP7, I would recommend using the long suppressor, the cryo barrel, the 40 round mag, and the synthetic tip ammo. So with the MP7, it's going to take 6 shots to kill up close, but even with 1 or 2 shots to the head, it's going to bring my shots to kill down to 5. And with 3 shots to the head, it's going to take my shots to kill down to 4. If you didn't want to waste extra points on ammo, you could switch back to the 30 round mag and use those points on a grip, or you could spend those points on a laser. And the build is going to be more or less the same for the USG-90. The only real difference is that you can't change the mag or add a grip with the USG-90. So what I would do instead is spend those points on a laser or hollow point ammo. It really depends on what you want out of the weapon though. For the KB9, I would recommend using the 23 or the 27 round mag, since you're going to run out of ammo really quickly with the 17 round mag. And for the rest of the attachments, you're going to want to use the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the slim angled grip, and the 5 milliwatt laser. This is going to be very versatile in close range combat, and with the combination of the suppressor and the grip, you should be able to engage in mid-range combat more easily. And for the CZ, you do need to build it a little differently than other SMGs. It is a very powerful close-range option, but the recoil is pretty unruly, which makes it hard to control in mid-range combat and even some situations in close-range combat. It is going to be a bit harder to control this SMG without any recoil control attachments. As you can see, it's pretty unruly, and you're going to have to tap fire a lot more past 20 meters. But with some recoil attachments, it's going to be a lot easier to control. So ideally, you're going to want to use the long suppressor or any of the other muzzles that are going to reduce your recoil buildup and improve your recoil recovery. I personally like to use a light barrel just so I'm more accurate in mid-range engagements, but you can go for the extended barrel instead for some extra muzzle velocity. For the grip, I personally like to use the ribbed vertical grip just so I can get some extra recoil control, but it does have that penalty to ADS accuracy, which will affect the improvements from the light barrel. And besides that, I usually go for the hollow point ammo and the aftermarket buffer just so the recoil is a bit smoother while I'm firing. And altogether, you're going to see it's a lot easier to control. The recoil variation is still going to throw you off from time to time. Most of the time, it's going to be a lot easier to shoot at range. And for the SCW, I personally like to build it for versatility since it's the only SMG that does 20 damage past 20 meters. I would personally recommend using the 20 or the 25 round mag just so you have some extra ammo for close to mid-range engagements. But I personally like to use the 20 round mag because it gives me enough ammo to engage with multiple enemies before I need to reload. Besides that, I usually go for the long suppressor, but you can use the compensated brake, the compensator, or the double port brake. You can stick with the basic barrel or go for the light barrel, but I like to use the extended barrel because it costs 5 points and it gives me a chance to use more attachments. And to make sure I'm as accurate as possible, I usually go for the slim angled grip as well. And with the rest of the points, you could go for a laser, you could go for the aim tac light, you can go for some ergonomics or an ammo type. But I'm going to go for the subsonic ammo, just to reduce my 2D spotting distance down to 9 meters. And with the last 5 points, I am going to go for the mag catch. This build is going to keep the recoil tame enough that you can get kills at mid-range without many issues. And with the subsonic ammo, it's going to be a lot harder for enemies to find you up to the 9 meter range. Now for LMGs, you're obviously going to want to build these for mid to long range combat, but there are a couple you can build to be a bit more versatile for close range combat as well. So for the L110, you can build this pretty similarly to the B36, since it does have the same damage profile, fire rate, and muzzle velocity, and it also has the same stable recoil and relatively low bullet spread. So for versatility, you can obviously use the double port brake, the compensated brake, the compensator, the long suppressor, or the lightened suppressor, but I'm going to go for the long suppressor just for the spotting distance and the recoil improvements. Each barrel type is going to be a pretty good option for the L110, but to keep the L110 versatile, I'm going to use the light barrel to improve my ADS speed and my ADS accuracy while moving. I am also going to use the violet laser to further improve my ADS accuracy, and I'm going to use the slim angled grip to improve my ADS speed, my weapon draw speed, and my recoil control. With all these attachments specifically, it's going to be pretty easy to get kills up until about 50 meters, but the recoil does get a bit crazy around 70 meters, so I do recommend burst firing. And even though it does say the ADS speed is 300 milliseconds, when you use this build with the support class, you're actually going to get your ADS speed down to 250 milliseconds because of the support class's weapon proficiency. So it is going to be way more useful in close range combat when you're using the support class. For a more long-range focused build, all I'm really going to do is switch to the heavy extended barrel, and with the extra 10 points, I'm going to equip the hollow point ammo. The only real difference with this build is that your bullet spread is going to be a lot tighter while firing, which is going to make mid to long range engagements a bit easier. But with the ribbed vertical and the full angled grips, you are going to have an ADS accuracy penalty, so I do recommend keeping the violet laser on. And with hollow point ammo, you're going to get a 3-shot kill to the head up until about 10 meters, as well as 2 shots to the head and 1 anywhere to the body. And up until about 75 meters, you're going to get a 4-shot headshot. Next is going to be the DRS, which is one of the best guns in the game, if you didn't know already. It's very accurate, and it's pretty versatile compared to every other LMG. For a build that's more focused on versatility, you're obviously going to want to use the double port brake, compensator, long suppressor, or lightened suppressor. But for the sake of having some extra points, I'm going to go for the compensated brake. For the barrel, you're obviously going to want to lean towards the extended or heavy extended barrels, but for the extra points and the lack of penalties, I'm going to use the extended barrel. Since the DRS isn't very hard to control, you'll ideally want to use the alloy vertical grip, the ribbed stubby, or the slim or full angled grips. But to improve handling as well as improving my recoil control, I'm going to use the slim angled grip. One of the few downsides with the DRS is that the spread is pretty bad, so you will ideally want to use a violet laser or the light barrel. And with my last 20 points, I'm going to equip the synthetic tip ammo and the aftermarket buffer. All these attachments are going to make the DRS very accurate. This build specifically is actually a really good RedSec build, since you can reach out to around 50 or 75 meters pretty easily. And with headshot ammo, you'll be able to get a 3-shot headshot up to around 75 meters. And for a build that's more focused on long range, I'm going to get rid of the synthetic tip ammo, switch to the compensator and the heavy extended barrel, and equip the 36 round mag and the stippled stubby. With the higher zoom scope, you will need to be a bit careful at longer ranges because the recoil can feel pretty intense, but if you can get it under control, it's going to be a really good option for multiplayer and RedSec. If you wanted to use the double port brake to get some extra recoil control on top of improving your recoil buildup and recovery, I would recommend just getting rid of the 36 round mag. The RPKM is also a pretty versatile LMG since it is a 3-shot kill weapon, but because the fire rate is so slow, it is going to get beat out pretty easily by other 3-shot kill weapons. To build the RPKM for versatility, you're going to want to go for the long or light suppressors. You can use the compensated brake if you wanted to, but the long or light suppressor is going to help bring your spotting distance down, which is going to help a lot if you're stuck in close range combat. For the barrel, you can use the extended or the heavy extended, but I'm going to use the extended barrel for the point cost. For the grip, I'm going to use the hand stop just to further improve my ADS speed and overall handling. And then I'm going to equip the 40 round fast mag just for some better reload speed. And with the leftover points, I'm going to equip the synthetic tip ammo for better headshot damage, and the aftermarket buffer for smoother recoil. Just like the other 3-shot weapons, you're going to get a 2-shot headshot up to about 5 meters, and then a 3-shot headshot up until about 75 meters. The recoil is also pretty easy to deal with. You're not going to be dealing with a lot of recoil variation, and the vertical recoil itself is very manageable, so you're not going to have a hard time in longer range engagements. To focus more on long range, I'm going to keep the aftermarket buffer, the synthetic tip ammo, the 40 round fast mag, and the extended barrel, but I am going to switch to the compensated brake and the ribbed vertical foregrip just for some extra recoil. This build is obviously going to feel a lot better with the higher zoom scope for longer range combat, but the spread is going to be a bit worse since this build doesn't have any attachments to offset that ADS penalty. And for the M123K, there really isn't a whole lot you can do besides build it for mid to long range. It is a very consistent LMG, and it has a pretty good damage model at range. The recoil can be a bit hard to get used to, so using high recoil grips and tap firing is going to be essential with this LMG. For the mid to long range build, you're ideally going to want to use the long or light suppressor, but you can use the compensated brake or the double port brake for RedSec if you really wanted to. You can use the heavy barrel if you wanted to focus more on mid-range engagements, and you can use the short barrel if you wanted to focus more on close range viability. But the best bet for longer range combat is going to be the heavy extended barrel. For the grip to offset the recoil on this LMG, you're ideally going to want to go for the stippled stubby or the 6H64 vertical grip. But for the extra ADS speed, I am going to use the stippled stubby instead. And with the last 10 points, you can go for a violet laser to offset the accuracy penalty from the grip, but I'm going to go for the hollow point ammo instead, just for a better headshot multiplier. As you can see with this build, it's going to be pretty stable at longer ranges, but the recoil variation can catch you off guard, so you do have to be a bit careful. And with the hollow point ammo, you'll get a 3-shot headshot up until about 10 meters, and a 4-shot headshot out to 75 meters. As for the KTS, it can be pretty versatile, but because its fire rate is so slow, it's better to focus more on mid to long range combat. Build the KTS for versatility. You're going to want to go for the long or light suppressors, but you can use the double port brake, the compensated brake, or the compensator if you really wanted to. For the barrel, you're obviously going to want to go for the heavy extended barrel just so you can have that 1000 meter per second muzzle velocity, the slim hand stop for better overall handling, the violet laser to improve your ADS accuracy while moving. For the mag, you can use any of these options available to you, but I like to use the 60 round fast mag just to improve my reload speed without losing any of my ammo. And with the last 15 points, I'm going to go for synthetic tip ammo just to improve my headshot multiplier. But you could use this for a better laser or some ergonomics. And I'm sure that if you've used the KTS already, you already know it's going to be pretty stable at any range no matter what you really put on it. But with this build, you're going to be able to engage in mid-range combat or closer range engagements pretty easily. And with the synthetic tip ammo, you're going to get a 3-shot headshot up until about 75 meters. To go all out on long range, what I'm going to do is switch to the 50 round mag. You could obviously use the 45 round mags or keep the 60 round mags if you wanted to, but I like the 50 round mag just because it improves my sprint recovery. And besides that, I'm going to get rid of synthetic tip ammo so I can equip the slim angled grip and the light suppressor. And with the last 5 points, I'm actually going to equip the rail cover as well just to further improve my sprint recovery and draw speed. This build is going to feel the same for the most part. With the light and suppressor, you're not going to have that weapon sway penalty, but because this build doesn't have synthetic tape ammo, you're not going to have that extra headshot multiplier, so it isn't going to be as useful in closer range combat. For the M240, the M250, the M60, and the M121, you are going to want to build these pretty similarly. All of these LMGs are very powerful options for mid to long range combat, but their recoil can be pretty unruly, which makes them difficult to use. So for the M60 specifically, you're going to want the long suppressor, the heavy extended barrel, the stippled stubby, the 75 round belt, and the rail cover. Now obviously you could switch some attachments around if you wanted. If you're fine with the 50 round mag, you can use that and get rid of the rail cover to get yourself a laser, or you could equip the light barrel. For the M121 and the M50 specifically, you are going to have some extra points to spend on the violet laser as well as hollow point ammo. And for the M60, you should be able to equip the 100 round belt, but otherwise there really isn't a lot of variation to this build for these LMGs. And as for the RPK-74M, you are going to want to build this pretty similarly to the RPKM or the B36. This LMG really isn't the best for close range combat because its damage model is actually worse than the AK-205, but it does excel in mid to long range combat because of its lack of recoil and bullet spread, just like the AK-205. So for a good mid to long range build, you'll ideally want to go for the long or lightened suppressors, or the double port brake or compensated brake. For the barrel, you'll ideally want to go for the heavy extended barrel, but you could use the heavy barrel or the basic barrel for some extra ADS speed. They're all 10 points, so it doesn't really matter what you choose. For the grip, you don't really need anything more than the alloy vertical or the rib stubby. You can use the slim or full angled grips if you want, but the recoil can get a bit out of hand at longer ranges with higher zoom scopes. So in my opinion, the rib stubby or the alloy vertical grip is going to be your best option. And with the rest of my points, I'm going to go for the violet laser to further improve my accuracy while moving, and the aftermarket buffer to smooth out the recoil while I'm firing. In my opinion, this is one of the best options for mid to long range combat in the game. It doesn't have a lot of recoil or spread, so it's very easy to control past 75 meters, and the time to kill is actually pretty fast for its damage model. You could also switch to the 30 or 36 round mag if you wanted some better handling, but you honestly don't really need that. This LMG is actually very good when it comes to handling. And if you wanted synthetic tip ammo, all you really need to do is get rid of the aftermarket buffer and the violet laser. This LMG is still going to perform very well without these attachments, and with synthetic tip ammo, you can improve your headshot multiplier and get a very fast time to kill at range if you hit headshots. With synthetics equipped on this LMG, you're going to get a 3-shot headshot up to 10 meters and a 4-shot headshot up to 75 meters, which is going to significantly reduce your time to kill and make this LMG way more viable for long-range combat. And for the DMRs, snipers, and shotguns, the builds are going to be pretty much the same for each weapon. For DMRs, you're going to want the lightened suppressor, the extended barrel, the slim hand stop, whatever fast mag is available, long range ammo if it's available, and the aftermarket buffer. I obviously don't have the attachments available for most DMRs, but it should leave you with about 5 to 10 points to spend on other attachments. You could put on a violet laser to improve your ADS accuracy while moving, but the laser will be seen by enemy players if you're looking directly at them, so it is something you have to consider. For sniper rifles, you're going to want the lightened suppressor, the extended barrel, the violet laser, long-range ammo if it's available, and the ADS bolt if it's available. Like I was saying with DMRs, the laser will be seen by enemy players if you're looking directly at them, so if you want to avoid that, you can get rid of the laser and use the anti-glare coating instead. For shotguns, you're going to want to use the CQB suppressor, slim hand stop, and the 50mm blue laser. And you could also use the 5 or 6 round mag to improve your handling, but that's going to be up to you. If you wanted to use slugs for your build, all you really need to do is get rid of the slim hand stop and the laser just so you can make room for the slugs. This build is also going to be the same for the M1014. For the SKS specifically, I would recommend switching to the extended barrel just so you have some extra room to use the aftermarket buffer to make your recoil smoother while firing. When it comes to the DB12, I would recommend just not using it in general. It doesn't have a good damage model, and the fire rate is going to get you killed more often than not. So that's going to be about it for the video. With all these changes to gunplay and the new attachments, there's still a lot of room to experiment. So let me know in the comments what's been working well for you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to keep up with all the best tips, tricks, and breakdowns in Battlefield 6. And with that out of the way, I'll see you in the next video.